Hey everybody, some Gadget Guy here, and we are continuing our onslaught of smartwatch reviews, especially focusing on the Android Wear ecosystem that I've had a few Android Wear watches to play with. And folks, I saved the best for last. Spoiler alert, the G-Watch R is going to be getting a pretty good review. Now, while the first G-Watch was a functional piece of equipment that you could strap to your wrist, LG has done a terrific job of addressing style and ergonomics with the G-Watch R. But let's jump into some hardware comparisons. Here is the G-Watch R next to the Samsung Gear 2. And next to the Asus ZenWatch, one of my other favorite Android Wear devices. G-Watch next to a Moto 360. One of the first smartwatches I ever owned, the Martian Passport. And one of my all-time favorite smartwatches, the Qualcomm Talk. Just to take a tour around the hardware, starting off with the watch band, I wasn't actually a huge fan of the leather band. It took a while just to kind of get it flexy and to break it in, but LG was kind enough to send over one of their sport bands also, so this is actually the band I've been wearing most often with my G-Watch R. Of course, we've got the gorgeous circular display. I'm gonna spend a little time talking about that all on its own, but we've got the stainless steel housing with a nice little bezel ring, and this beveled bezel ring actually does a pretty good job of protecting your watch's screen from the occasional nick or scratch. I actually do have a super fine little scratch right there on my Asus ZenWatch, and it's one of the issues you're going to run into when you have a perfectly flush piece of glass just sticking out from your wrist. We've got the microphone on the bottom edge of the watch, just under the 30-second marker on the watch face, which makes sense for voice commands if you wear the watch on the top of your wrist, as that's the end of the watch you'd be talking into. The watch band is, of course, a standard 22mm affair with these quick release pins. This band actually comes courtesy of Fossil. It's one of the things that I'm kind of digging about this ecosystem, starting to use very universal parts. If you don't like the watch band that comes with your watch, it's actually pretty easy to find a replacement. The watch does charge through a cradle and these little pogo pins here. We'll talk about the cradle in just a bit. And we've got a pretty excellent heart rate monitor built into the bottom. And before we flip this watch over, I really do like that the matte finish extends to the back of the watch too. As watches can get bumped around a lot, even the back of the watch can be subjected to the occasional nick or scratch. And so I think this matte finish is going to do a better job of aging over time. But folks, I'm a big fan of what LG was able to do with this display. It's a p-oled. Just like with an AMOLED display like on a Samsung product, each one of these pixels makes its own light. So when we toggle this watch back to its sort of screensavery mode, almost all of these pixels now are totally off. And the few that are still on, just to be able to show me watch arms, aren't using a significant amount of electricity. Now, the actual software experience on this watch really isn't terrifically different than any of the other Android Wear devices we've reviewed in the past. You tap to wake the screen up. Notifications are basically stacked under the watch. So when we slide through, I got a YouTube comment, my offline music is ready to play from the watch. We'll talk more about that later. Weather, some Twitter stuff, some Instagram stuff. And when you want to get rid of a notification, you just swipe it away and it also disappears from your phone. And so if I swipe away this tweet, if I immediately swipe back, I can undismiss it. And that's kind of helpful, but you know, if you've got a ton of stuff going on your watch, it's a little tricky to kind of keep navigate swiping through things. I mean, I understand what Google's trying to do in making this stuff organic. These are just like cards on Google now. They're gonna pop up with relevant information, but you have a lot of swiping to go through to get to different pieces of information if you want to keep it active. And the more you start clearing stuff out from your wrist, I find the harder it is to keep track of stuff on your phone. But I digress. From a top swipe, you can get into other settings and controls. So, you know, this is where if we want to mute the watch, if we want to go into a theater mode, which blacks out the screen and silences your notifications for a while, there's a sunlight mode to help with brightness, and then individual settings. From here we can get into all kinds of fun stuff like adjusting the brightness, Bluetooth devices. You can pair your watch with headphones and speakers, whether or not you want the always on screen, airplane mode, to power off reset, to change the watch face from here, but we can do that from the actual watch face, about, and then if you've enabled them, developer options, and that's also how you get into taking a screenshot. I've got a separate video showing you how to do that. Now, whatever secret sauce LG has poured into this display, the G-Watch R has had one of the better screens for indoor and outdoor viewability. I mean, it's obviously gonna get crushed in direct sunlight when you compare it to a Qualcomm Talk or a Pebble with an e-ink display, but I find I'm not having to juice the brightness nearly as much, and I've never really needed to go into sunlight mode for most days, and we've been having some partly cloudy days here in LA. going between 2 and 4 has been plenty bright for just most at-a-glance situations. I still think manufacturers need to start examining more exotic display tech for things like smartwatches, like Mirasol displays, or finding ways to make color e-ink displays. But the G-Watch R is easily one of the best that I've used with a traditional smartphone screen style technology, be it LCD or some type of organic light emitting diode. And it's kind of interesting how we talk about displays and resolution when it's a circle, because we're still calling it a 320 by 320 display, but it's a circle, so it's not 320 by 320. It's a little confusing. But the fact that LG is using a slightly smaller screen than the screen found on the Moto 360, I feel that with this lower resolution, that pixel pitch actually makes a noticeable difference in the clarity of text on the screen, fine detail. When you've got pictures, when you've got cool wallpapers or really fancy watch faces, they're a little bit easier to read, they're a little bit crisper. One last thing about circular screens though, we still have the mentality of designing for squares and rectangles. So some applets start to feel a little claustrophobic once you start sliding through that information, because you're kind of portholing a piece of information. So as you get to this top of the screen, obviously the circle is going to start cutting into information, and it can sometimes feel a little claustrophobic, like you want to line everything up with the center middle of the screen when you're trying to get a sense of what's going on in your watch. You know, like if you're using this as a fitness tracker, it's not like these lists flow around the circle, they just sort of start getting cut into once you start scrolling up. But it was just kind of interesting when I first started using circular watch displays, is I would start trying to look through or look around the bezel, realizing, oh, right, it's a circular screen. I'm not going to be able to see that piece of information. I'm actually really glad to see that LG fought the urge of doing their own standalone companion app in addition to the app that you have to load on your phone just to run Android Wear devices. But one area where LG did go beast mode on the G-Watch R are on all of the different watch faces that are available on this watch. And so this is their fitness watch face, which is very similar to like a Withings Activité Pop. You've got a little arm right there, which just ticks over until I reach my steps goal, which I have set at 10,000 steps. And then there's a little ticker arm just showing you weather conditions from rainy to sunny. And as you can see in Southern California right now, we're in between partly cloudy and rainy. But if we long press on this screen, we can go through a ton of other watch faces. So this is the one that comes stock on the device. It's the red watch face. We've got the simple watch face, which is sort of a normal Android Wear experience. We've got Aurora if you want something a little more psychedelic. We've got this camping watch face, which gives your watch just a more rugged overall look. We've got this Castle White. It's a little cleaner. It's a little more sophisticated. We've got classic Roman numerals. We've got Club if you want something a little funkier. Coordinates, which just looks rad. We've got a dashboard, a digital log, so it's a combination of digital and analog watch face. There's the fitness one that I'm using. We've got GMT. I don't know what that is, but it looks like a cool old school chronograph. Ditto hiking, which starts giving you a compass built into your watch face. You know, maybe you just really like keeping track of the phases of the moon. Or maybe you want to go super stark and simple. And down into this Ocean watch face, which I actually really like that this cutout for the digital readout on the bottom of Ocean lines up with the notifications. Is one of the things that's a little wonky about Android Wear is if you have a watch face that has information in that lower third, when a notification pops up, it's going to get blocked by that notification. So you're always kind of swiping those notifications back down again just so your watch face is unmolested. Out of the box, you've got a ton of stuff to play with, but it doesn't get in the way of the actual UI or functionality of the watch, like maybe manufacturer skins can sometimes do on Android phones. So this music listening feature is pretty finicky. As far as I can tell, it's mostly based on what you download through Google Play after you've connected your watch. So if you already have music on your phone, it doesn't seem to sync that music over to your watch. It's everything that you move over onto your phone from that point will then be synced over. So I have Year of the Dragon, Busta Rhymes. I downloaded it from my Google Play account directly to my phone, and now I've got a little card here on the phone saying that it's downloading music. We've got 9 tracks left. I've got my G-Watch R connected to a little jam classic here, but we're gonna scroll all the way down to start and play music. I'm gonna play on Wear, Year of the Dragon. I'm gonna turn that down so I don't get hit with a copyright notification, but that is music playing from my G-Watch R directly to a little Bluetooth speaker. You can hook up some Bluetooth headphones. You don't necessarily have to keep your phone on you now. You've got enough storage. You've got about 3 gigabytes of data of space that you can use just for cataloging playlists. If your music collection is uploaded to Google Play first, make sure that your watch is connected to your phone, then come into your settings, And down here, download to Android Wear. This is the menu setting that you want to make sure is activated. Then download some music from your cloud account on Google Play to your phone, and it should start transferring over to your watch. Because of all the technology, smartwatches are still on the bigger, bulkier side. You just have to work a bolder design into your aesthetic just to house all of the guts, the screen, the battery. But I think LG has done a really respectable job of incorporating a more watch-like feel into how this device wears on your wrist. Doesn't feel quite as much like a hockey puck on your arm as the Moto 360 did. And these little visual cues, like the seconds running along the bezel of the display, broadcast a more traditional watch vibe. We want to talk about things that more organically integrate into our daily lives and a little less like, here's this science fair project which is going to attract a lot of attention. Now, no one's going to say that this isn't a big watch, but this is a subtle little design element which helps keep the overall aesthetic looking a little cleaner. This really is one of the more flexible or one of the more versatile watches in the Android Wear ecosystem, and it dresses up and down very easily. Get yourself a couple different watch bands. Get like maybe a canvas watch band or a leather watch band, maybe a metal watch band, and it'll hang with just about any outfit you can pair it with. And those complaints I've had with watches like the Moto 360, performance is just so much snappier on this watch. I really haven't run into any situations where this thing gets hung up on just navigating the UI. And it seems to respond to flicky gestures just a little bit nicer. You don't have to have that edge-to-edge deliberate swipe going on just to get around your settings, for example. You can just kind of flick and page through very, very quickly. And as we talk about a more organic interaction with our information, it's this type of fluidity that we need to actually achieve that sense of it being a more organic experience. Battery life on the G-Watch R has been the best of any Android Wear device I've used to date. So I really try to do everything I can from my watch in an effort to pull my phone out of my pocket as little as humanly possible. Voice searches, navigation, replying to text messages. If I can do it from my watch, I want to do it from my watch. My watches are constantly blowing up, so that screen on time is pretty crucial to my watch experience. But the combination of an OLED screen and the slightly larger battery, there's a 410 milliamp hour battery in the G-Watch R, has actually had a pretty noticeable impact on runtime, as I can often make it all the way through the day and into the night, and sometimes into the next morning for some use on a single charge. With more reasonable or moderate use, this could easily be a 2-day watch. But I definitely feel a lot less pressure to run home and make it to a charger with the G-Watch R than I ever did with the Moto 360. So where does that leave us with the LG G-Watch R? This is the best watch in the Android Wear ecosystem, bar none. And it's one of the best smartwatches I've ever used. So I gotta say, some of the coverage and some of the other reviews on the G-Watch R have been making me a little cranky. First of all, I wanna address the number of people that have complained about having a bezel around your screen. Oh, it's the bezel's just so big. You can't even do anything with the watch with the bezel, it's so big. Having a bezel on the screen is what allows us to have the first truly circular display. I'm sorry guys, the Moto 360 is really a Moto 270. And I can't say I'm a fan of that flat tire look at the bottom of Motorola's screen. And two, it makes swiping gestures a little easier as you have a place to start the gesture from before you actually come in contact with the screen. Now I get it, there's a whole population of people out there who want edge-to-edge displays, no bezels on anything. But in my opinion, until we get much smarter algorithms for how touchscreens interact with gestures, having a little bit of a bezel is just going to be a more practical solution for interacting with our gadgets. And lastly, while I'm in my cranky pants rant mode, this brings us to price. The LG G-Watch R is going to retail for $299, and that's going to be with a leather watch strap, not a metal watch strap like the $299 version of the Moto 360. So folks, we just gotta lay this out there for all of the other reviewers who are just now getting into wearables. If you're complaining about the G-Watch R being too expensive or too pricey, I think you're kind of being a jerk. No, I mean that. There's really very little to criticize, to properly criticize about this watch. Which means we have to kind of fall back on that techie, geeky, nerd boy fixation with, is it worth it? Is the price worth it for what you get? And it just means you couldn't find anything to properly criticize this watch and you sound kind of like a dork.
Well, but it's just so expensive. I think all gadgets should only be $3 and a half a ham sandwich.
I mean, break it down for me, folks. It's a stylish looking timepiece. It's stainless steel construction. It's decently rugged and water resistant. It's got got class-leading battery life. It's the first truly circular display. It's got a fancy new screen technology in that circular display to aid in battery life. And it's got one of the better heart rate monitors I've ever used for those of you who care about your fitness tracking. And with how far LG is pushing the boundaries on Android Wear hardware design, this thing is still going to undercut the Apple Watch due out in April by $50. I really don't understand what people are looking for when they complain about things like price. I mean, I get wanting all gadgets to be as affordable and as inexpensive as possible, but as we start climbing into more premium territory, that means we're gonna start climbing into more premium price tags. And that's what's going to be really exciting about this ecosystem. Watches like the G-Watch R legitimize smartwatches as being more fashionable. Not just being a plastic rectangle on your wrist, something that not only fulfills your tech needs, but can make a statement about your personal style as well. I know better watches will come out in the future, and there's still plenty of room for improvement in wearable technology in general. But as it stands today, LG is at the top of the hill. You guys want me to declare a winner? Here it is. And I'll leave some links down below this video so you can get more information on the G-Watch R and where you can shop it online. As always, folks, thanks so much for watching, and be sure to hit that subscribe button if you would like to see more reviews and videos like these. And I would not be able to continue producing on this channel if you folks weren't out there sharing my videos with your family, friends, and on social media. So keep bringing more cool people to the party. Hit that thumbs up button, and I will catch you all on the next review.